What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings podcast studio. Today, I am joined once again by Mr. Ian Dorian. How you doing today, Ian?
Hey, how are you? I'm doing great. It's great to be on the show again.
I'm doing good. It's great to have you as a returning guest. Last time we had you on, we had your bro in here too, and had a great time. So wanted to make sure to get you back and get you guys on here separately, get to focus on each of you a little bit more. So here we are today. How are things doing in beautiful California?
In SoCal here, it's quite beautiful. It got pretty warm this week. It's in the 90s.
Okay, so you guys are still having that warm, beautiful weather down there. We're finally creeping down a little bit here.
Yeah, well, you're a couple hours north, right?
Farther than that, I'm up in Washington State, so a little bit farther, but yeah, we're known for the rain.
Right. Yes.
You guys are known for consistently sunny weather pretty much year round down there, although you do get the rain every now and again.
You know, it's interesting. The last 2 years, we've gotten not only rain, but gray skies to the point where I felt like I was either in London or France or something in the winter. Or the spring, the fall or something where it's gray and rainy. It hasn't been like that. Now, most homes around here are not built for that.
No,
They're not
not at
designed
all.
for consistent rain for 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Luckily, my place did fine. But I have to say, one nice benefit of the rain has been the incredibly verdant hillsides and mountains.
Oh, definitely.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what
gorgeous.
it's funny when people come to Washington State, to the Seattle area, they always comment on how beautiful and lush and green everything is, and I'm like, well, if you like that, you have to be okay with the rain, because that's the whole reason it looks like that here.
Exactly. The earth needs it. And so one of the only things that I don't know if it's correlated, but some people around here have told me that they typically have like earthquakes after rain.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know how true that is. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
These days
Not
we
sure
don't
about
know.
that.
These days we don't know how real almost anything is that
Anything,
we see.
exactly.
You
Yeah, in fact, this program I use, this platform, Squadcast, is integrated with another program. So during editing now, they've added a feature. It is still in beta testing, but you can utilize it, and you can literally, and I'm not going to do this because it has bad implications, but you could literally say I'm recording with you and I misspeak and I say apple instead of orange or whatever. I can go in post-production and change the word to the right thing, and it will actually make my mouth say the right thing, and it will make it sound like me saying it with AI.
Well, let's hope that works. Let's hope it doesn't look like pop locking. Remember the pop locking?
Yeah. The demonstration I saw of it, it was kind of scary how realistic it looked. So,
Well, it makes me think of, I won't go there too far, but it makes me think of Wag the Dog.
oh yeah,
When we see, we are so enamored with our technology and information and images and videos, and everyone getting their news and information from these things, and we can say,
yes,
"I saw it; it was real. Look what so and so did. Look what
yep,
they did. Those people." And we have to
exactly.
remember that we can't. keep looking at people as they, them, and
No,
those. We have to look at it as us and we. And if
absolutely.
we
You got to,
look at it us and we say, you know, there are people that are part of us, our group, that's a diverse group, the Earth. What did Bruce Lee say? We're all the same under the sky, you know?
yeah,
And if we can keep to that and not fall into the trap of, of taking our bias and taking things for granted and using it to push us away from each other. And that's what my books tend to be about. They
right.
tend to deal with issues where misunderstanding or another way to look at something where there's a logic to both sides, where it seems logical, but that opposing logic causes intense conflict.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
where
and I think
yeah, go ahead.
bringing critical thinking into things, like making people think with the works like yours that do that. And hopefully, it helps people to be aware that we can't just blindly um, hear something and believe it to be true without doing our research, our due diligence, and thinking about these subjects a little deeper. So I think that's important because so much in social media, it's like you said, oh, I saw it, so it's true. And now with AI,
Yeah,
it's like, you got
and
to really make sure.
now keep in mind, and this is food for thought. It's a technology that we have now, everyone at their computer desks or cell phones. It doesn't mean now is when the technology is available. It means
Exactly.
the technology has been usable for a very long time and tested.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we may be just being able to do that ourselves, but how long have people around the world with access to this technology, even believe it or not, countries we would think don't have power or access, they do have
Yeah.
access to those things if it benefits their country. And
100%.
you know, in Law of Resistance, the graphic novel that I did with many of the great people, Matthew Pilata and Jim Kruger, and I developed that. You know, worked with Texera, Sienkiewicz, Ross Campbell, Janice Chang, and others, Dean White, and and I have to say, and that's I probably skipped one or two people, and I apologize.
Mhm.
Matt Banning, Joe Weems, of course, Taylor Esposito. I think I got everybody. Okay, great. So I wanted to credit everybody. Um,
That's
um,
a murderer's row of talent right there.
yeah, it's a lot of brilliant talent, and what a gift it was to work on that. But my point, to get back to my point, is that the books that I like to make, and Law of Resistance in particular, ask several questions. But at the heart of it, the questions are about a conflict between what is right and what are your rights.
Right.
They're not always the same thing. Like if we look back at any culture, there was a time when the rights of a person were not morally right.
Absolutely.
So I like to ask myself, is there a difference between my rights and what's right? Is
Hmm.
there a difference because I know it's happened in the past in the fact that someone's rights, as I mentioned, weren't always morally right. So the question is about your what is your ability versus what should you actually do? You know, it's sort of like
Yeah.
what's that phrase? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something.
Yeah.
So that's at the crux of law of resistance. And that's why the
Nice.
title, hence law, as what is your right, and resistance, is it right? You know,
Now, is
it's
law of
okay.
resistance, is that your most recent published work that you've done
That is
as
the
far as like comic work?
that's the most recent published graphic novel work.
Okay.
Um, because I did other work for other people. A lot of things, unfortunately, around here take years to come out.
Yeah.
Like Watchmen just came out, and it still
Yes.
isn't even streaming yet. Actually, technically, from what I understand, it was due to who had the ownership of distribution or what have you. I could be wrong, so please don't hold me to it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Watchmen was chapter one. There was chapter one and chapter two. They were both feature films, animated. I was a character designer. Um, Originally, from what I understand, it was going to be in the theaters, but it depended on who had the right of distribution or something. So it
Oh,
ended up
okay.
being going to DVD for that reason, from what I understand, but I could be wrong. Okay, I have
And is
covered
that,
myself. I could be wrong. Um,
is that why it hasn't made it to streaming as well, most
well,
likely?
it will make it. Yes, it will make it because it's released as a film. That's why. Um, but it will make it to streaming in about. I'm not exactly sure, but soon. I don't.
Cool.
I have a number, but I don't know what rights I have to say about anything.
Exactly. Yeah, you gotta be
So
careful
I
with
want to
that
be
kind of stuff.
respectful and careful, and just say that I'm sure at some point it will be streaming like everything else. It was, of course, a Warner production. Um, I had the benefit of seeing it. And that's one thing I didn't send you any images of. I did send you some character designs, but I didn't
Yes,
send you the
yes.
poster designs of the Watchmen.
Actually, do you wanna pull up those character sheets now while we're chatting about it?
Sure, if you want to, or
Yeah.
I will, or you
Yeah,
show
I
me
can
how to
pull
do it
them
because
up.
I'm kind of like
I
not good
got
at
you
this.
covered. I got you covered. I'm gonna open the folder, and then I'm gonna do a screen share, and then you will be able to see what's on my screen, and we'll be able to chat about them. Let me see here, because I got them all uploaded. Boom. All right. So
Now, just for the audience,
this is
uh,
why you got to watch the video version, audience. You're
just
gonna
for,
see all sorts of cool stuff.
yeah, there's some. I gave a bunch of images of the artwork of key images,
Yep.
sketches, some of the people that I work with. There's photos and images of those people as well. And so if you get a chance and you're listening uh, and you want to see it, please watch the video.
Yeah.
I'd love
Go
for you to
go
have the chance to see it.
Yeah, go to the YouTube version of the podcast. Again, this podcast is audio and video, so we always encourage people to head over and check out the video version because everybody always has so much cool stuff to share and show. So, all right, I'm going to open this first one and then I'm going to do my screen share here.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool. Now, is this one of the.
Yes, this is an ancillary character. He was a cook in the
Okay.
kitchen, and uh, in the um, in the Watchmen, the graphic novel, the interiors and sort of spine and um, internal organs, etc., appear. And this, if I recall correctly, this character is a tiny little character in the comic book and
Right.
appears, and he gets surprised, and I think he throws down his food or whatever. I don't recall exactly because I wasn't part of story. I was part of character design. But so this
And
is an
this is.
example of what I would do for the character. And if you see here, sometimes if I had the time, I would do like an alternate version. Like if
Okay.
you notice in the second and third image from the left, he has a different neck.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
it's
and it
really.
says it says alternate version 2 suggestion up at the top left corner as well.
Mhm. And that's not normally required. Just
Right.
sometimes if I have extra time and the character is not there hasn't been a directive exactly of the exact proportions of the character, then I will make suggestions like that, and they can just ignore it or choose the one they like. You know. Um,
And just for people who don't know a whole lot about animation and how all that works, like this is a character, basically a character turnaround sheet or a model sheet where it allows the animator to be able to see, or the artist, if it were a comic book, kind of an idea of how the character looks from different angles, what their costume design is, and all that type of stuff. So they have this for references, especially in animation, because the camera can be moving all around this character and looking at them from different angles. It's important for the animators to be able to visualize that. So Ian does these sheets, or did these sheets, and that helps assist the animators in their process. Is that a pretty decent summary of how all that works,
yeah,
Ian?
yeah, and to be clear, it's all it's a collaborative process. By the time, like, I might get a character from the beginning, but then three, four, five, or no one, or one, or who knows how many, may rework it and rework it until the art director and the team and the director is happy with the final look and they feel it's the best version or
Right.
parts. So it may initiate with this drawing and end up slightly different in the production. And another
Yeah.
thing I want to say is we're often given a three-quarter view, and if not, we're given a three-quarter view in the beginning. Like if you look to the far left
Yep.
of the screen, that is a three-quarter view, and it's the most telling of the character. It reveals the most as the inside of the foot, the outside front of the foot, the outside of back of the hand, and then the inside, partial inside of the hand. So you're getting like this sort of. It's almost like having the closest thing to looking at it with two eyes.
Yeah.
Because remember, this is a monocular vision.
Right.
Monocular, for anyone that hasn't used these.
You were talking about the monocular vision before
Oh,
we
so
got cut off on the
so
stream.
so a camera. If you think about a camera lens, most people know that a camera lens is a single lens. You don't have two lenses.
Right.
So mono is of course one. So monocular lens tends to make things look shorter and wider.
Okay.
That is why it helps with, like, say, print, to have people who are tall and long, let's say for modeling. It looks much better because a flat piece of paper will make people look wider and shorter. That's why everybody says, "Oh, I hate the way I look in pictures. I look chubby.
Right.
I look this. I look that." And that's the reason. It's because we don't have two eyes that are slightly different images that we piece together to see around the figure, so it just looks flatter.
That makes sense. Now,
So
who's this character here in this other
oh,
image?
I'm going to feel terrible because I can't remember his name.
Is it
I
another
believe he's
ancillary
yeah,
side
I think he's
character?
an interviewer.
Okay.
I believe he's in. Well, he's in it for sure, and he plays an important role. I did this guy, one of the last figures I did, but you can see here. Um, so one of the things I wanted to say also was that they probably they would have repeated this drawing, but used a computer for these, like the
Yeah.
jacket lines and so forth. But
Right.
like to get it like exactly perfect. Um, but some of the hatch marks that you see, like in the pants and on the face,
Hmm.
those that I actually drew did end up on, like, floating over
Oh, that's
and
cool. So they
parented
animate it. They
to the 3D
animated it on
model.
there.
So when
Nice.
you look at the 3D model in the film, it looks like it was drawn. As a matter of fact, Dave said it looked like we had, and I don't want to misquote him 100%. I'll do my best, Dave. I apologize. He said something to the effect of that we brought his drawings to life.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I can tell you this, he said that we did a glorious job. And
Nice.
so if other people don't like it, I'm so sorry for you. But the creator of it
I was gonna say
likes it.
that's his stamp of approval trumps everything there.
So, and I had gotten a message, or maybe more than one, I can't remember, from him, but I didn't think it was him. I thought it was some kind of like scam thing or
Prank.
something.
Yeah,
You
somebody
know,
was pranking you.
yeah. And then my friend called me up and said, "Hey, Dave Gibbons wrote to you." I'm like, "No, he didn't." He said, "Yeah, that's Dave." I'm like, "Oh,
Holy cow.
but
Now,
yeah,
are you doing these digitally?
yeah, these are done
Okay.
digitally. I am a traditional artist originally,
Yeah.
so I can tell you that when I did these, I did before I did them, during doing them, sometimes outside of work, I would do them um, on paper for
Gotcha.
myself. And I
Yeah.
do like lots of sketches and just to sort of get my head around wrap my head around the characters and what
Right.
they look like and their proportions. So it'd be more like second nature. Um, I did do those are sitting in a box somewhere.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, and this guy is really cool.
but those were all analog, what I'm talking about. And then
Right.
I would come in and do these. Yeah, this is the original Night Owl, right?
Oh, very cool.
There were two, and so where it's blue, all the marks that are blue is where the drawing appears over the 3D model,
Okay. Gotcha. So that helps them differentiate
which
and
is to be
delineate that.
yeah, which is to be parent. I say parented because I don't know the process, but it's something like it was projected. It appears to be on the characters. But from what I understand, it's not technically on the characters on the computer program. It's projected, but
Right.
I don't understand. And so you could take like half of what I said and say, let's
Yeah.
fact check this, uh,
Yeah, it's so
but
amazing what they're able to do with the 3D software, with the even something that looks more like traditional animation is 3D nowadays, and they're able to go in and make it look like uh, traditional, which is pretty neat.
so I'm going to say something first, responding to that. The
Yep.
attempt was to make it traditional. And I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think I was probably the only comic book artist on the job.
Okay.
Um, in other words, came from comic books, you know?
Yeah.
But I have to say, in all fairness to everyone and with all respect and appreciation, they did an amazing job. Everyone, actually, no, I was not the only comic book artist. Actually, now that I think about it, before I came on doing other previs work, there were two other people who had come from comics
Okay.
and really talented people, by the way. Like that, I
Right.
really admire their work. Um, that being said, going back to this, the idea is to capture the look and
Oh, that's a
also,
different thing. I
okay,
just
so
flipped
this
right
is
to the
something
next one.
different.
That's Loki right there.
Yeah, that was Loki. I was testing to see if I could be a part of a team for a job on What If. I didn't
Oh,
get it.
nice.
I didn't get the gig, but the team didn't get the gig. It's there's all kinds of reasons why, but
Right.
regardless of the fact, I wanted to show people something that where I was trying to learn the style and the look of the show.
Hmm.
This one, by the way, was done in Procreate,
Oh, yeah.
and there might be more of that. I don't know
Is
if the
that what
pictures are out
you
of order.
when you do? I think the pictures did end up out of order, so I don't know what we're gonna get next. But when you do your digital work, is most of it done on the iPad in Procreate?
Most okay. So when I do character design, I like to see it larger because character design is a very different, excuse the expression, animal
Yeah.
from comic book art, or even I did consumer product art. I did Family Guy, Simpsons, Rio 2,
Nice.
Avengers, but that's not exactly the same. It's so in comics you have to get a look of a character. You have to identify the character, but they're looking for your approach, your style to the character.
Okay.
Like what are you bringing to it? That's what makes it
Right.
so hard to get onto a book like that. Besides the
Yeah.
other plethora of incredibly difficult things like consistency and quality and timing and you name
Hmm.
it. Um, understanding the characters, translating stories. It's a plethora of things. However, getting back to just characters, you can draw a character, sometimes stretch the character, compact the character, make them move, sort of make their capes like super long in one image, and then the next image it's not as long. So
Yeah,
you can get away with that for dramatic effect, for storytelling purposes.
that
But when
makes
you go to
sense.
consumer products, you want to do more like what we saw there, like the on model. They call it on model. You want to do the
Yeah,
characters within the specific rules and regulations that have been worked out by teams of people and evaluated to be the best final solution for that character for the sake of animation or what have you.
yeah. I was
Um,
actually going to mention that term on model when we said model sheet or turnarounds,
mhm.
because I remember a great example of that was back with Superman when Jack Kirby got on the Superman stuff, and they went in there and had was it Kurt Swan or somebody? They had to redo Superman's face so he was more quote unquote on model compared to what Jack was doing with
Yeah,
him.
in all fairness, so I have two feelings about the whole thing.
Yeah,
I literally understand both sides. I
yeah.
really do. Having
I
worked in
can, I
animation, I
can,
understand.
I
Well,
can too. Even being a layman on it and not being somebody in the industry, like I get it,
if
especially
we're
with such
yeah,
an iconic character, right?
if you're a purist about the character, let me rephrase. If you're a purist about the artist, you'll be very upset if they touched somebody else's work with different faces.
Yeah,
Sort of like when you don't uh, think an inker pluses or compliments a penciler.
right,
But if you're a corporate person and you're still a regular person, by the way, you still eat, you still go to the bathroom, you still have possibly a family, you still love people, you're a human being, you just work in a corporation. A lot of those corporate people have a Superman at that time would have been and was and is a brand. He's
yeah,
not just um, an image. It's not just a drawing when it's done. It's a brand. And so try to think of it if somebody says, "Oh, Ian, you're full of it." Think about the Apple logo. Imagine if there was a different
yeah,
teeth marks or something else, or the apple was shaped differently. People would say, "That's not the Apple logo."
yeah. They would
It's
think it was
because
one of those knockoffs that you
correct.
can get, right?
So, regardless of how much we may love, or someone may love what I do, if it is within their responsibility, not the right, but the responsibility to maintain the branding and image of that character, then they have the quote unquote responsibility to change even what I did. And I'm
Yeah,
totally cool with it because I understand the reasoning.
yeah.
Now, that being said, I would have loved to have just at least had scans of Jack's original drawings,
Oh,
which
for
I believe there
sure.
are some that
There are
exist.
some. Yeah, I've seen some
Um,
of them,
but,
and it looks great. Like his Superman looks great, but it just wasn't what they were looking for that brand at the time.
yeah, I mean, even Stan Lee would change layouts of Jack's.
Yeah,
He would, not that Jack did a bad drawing, but he might say, well, the character's back is to us. Jack, it's a beautiful drawing, but this is the main character of the book. Would you mind?
right.
And what did Jack do? He just redid it. He
Yep.
didn't argue. He didn't fight. He didn't get angry. He didn't throw things across the room. He didn't want to do something to complain about it. He just redid it because he knew there was a reason and he needed to get the job done and move on.
Now, is this image here? This from Lost
This is
Landers?
well, that's Guy.
Okay, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You have to accept my apology because Guy was actually on earlier today, so
You
and
know
the
what?
fact that you guys are twins.
Yeah.
I mean,
The thing
I'm
is,
having trouble, Ian.
we're gonna have to arm wrestle for this. Okay.
Let's do it. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
We got to do a fake one where I win, like, and like everybody's like, anyway, no, that would be
My
impossible.
apologies.
No, no,
No,
no,
this
it's
is from
okay.
the
I
from
love
your
you
trade
too.
paperback that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, actually, this particular section of the book was inked by my one of my mentors. Actually, I was the assistant to Mark Texiera. Most people know him as Tex,
Yeah, I
and I
can see
assisted him on Ghost Rider. Oh
his
yeah,
style in
Tex
there.
just
I
yeah,
can
he
see
went
it.
straight in with a brush, and you know, he loves my anatomy work, but at the same time, I really love the visceral qualities that he brings to a drawing.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's
and
really
even though
amazing.
my anatomy work may be on point, there's certain things he does that for me sometimes just blows me away. He gives it this sort of natural, earthy experience to the drawings that and one of the texts inked about 30 pages of the book and even co-penciled one of the issues with me, and
Oh,
that was
wow.
inked by Joe Weems. So it was a real
Nice.
pleasure for me. But the thing is that I had worked under Tex on different books, and we've known each other for, oh gosh, maybe 20 years or close to it. So we
Right.
really know each other really well, and we also know each other on deadlines, on pages, on books. This issue, I don't know, it wasn't this issue. This was, I think, issue 1 or 2, but on issue, I think 4 or 5. It's been a couple of years now. We did the entire book in black and white in 8 days.
Wow.
We worked side by side about 15 to 16 hours a day,
That's
side by
crazy.
side. So if you think about it, it's 32 hours a day
Yeah,
when there's only 24 in a day.
that's crazy.
But because we had worked together in the past on his books, we could understand each other very well. And in all fairness, we both went in and through Neal Adams' studio together. No, well,
Okay,
let me
so
rephrase, not together, but at different times, but both of us went through Neal's
it
studio.
so it's almost like you were reading my mind because my next question was I was going to say I can pick up on some Neal Adams influence in this artwork. So I was going to ask you if he's an influence of yours, and it just so happens you guys were through that studio because I see it in the face and actually the hand. I can
Yes.
pick up on some Neal in there.
Neal, no, I never worked on a book, but I went in there, I showed him my stuff. He said, "You're not ready, kid, but I'm going to train you."
Nice.
I'm
Just like he did
paraphrasing,
with,
okay?
but just, you hear these stories of him doing this with so many people because he did that with Frank Miller as well.
Well, what he did, see, Frank was not stylistically ever going to work for Continuity Studios,
Hmm.
but he really loved the moxie, the thought process, and the strong singular vision that Miller has.
Right.
And from what I understand, I could be wrong. I'll have to ask Frank if I could ever get him to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
Um, and not that he's avoiding me or anything. I just never tried to call him.
Yeah.
But he might tell you, from what I understand, Neal made a call, or maybe he just got himself in. But
Yeah.
Neal was very proud of Frank's success. And actually, it was because of that he said to me, even though I can't hire you right now, I can train you.
Right.
And even if you don't work for me, it doesn't mean you can't work. And he said, there was a guy who used to come in here. This is right around the time the Dark Knight work came out from Frank. And he
Yeah.
said, there was a guy who used to come in here and he wasn't ready to work with us. It wasn't a fit. But,
So this is Neal talking to you right now, telling you all this right
thank you.
around
Yes, it's
that time
Neal. Thanks for
period.
keeping me on point
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah. No
Yes, it was
worries.
Neal telling me this. And I was a young guy. You have to think I was maybe 2 years out of college, out of high school.
Right.
And he said, you know, uh, I couldn't give him a job here, but he went over to Marvel. He got on a good book. He got better, and Frank Miller's doing great today. And my jaw dropped. And he
Yeah.
said, so I'm not going to kick you out of here. I'm not going to tell you you're not good enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to offer my studio my artists and writers, scripts, and I'm going to give you time every week and sit down
Wow.
with you and talk to you about your work. Now, this man was so busy. He had so much going on. He was still at the height of his powers, the height of his skill set, and yet he had time for me. I
Yeah.
call him Daddy Neal. His son Joel and I get along very, very well, and um, it's always it's an emotional moment whenever I visit
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
with Joel because Neal could be difficult at times, but people that demanding of themselves are often demanding of everyone if they're going to
Definitely.
be that good. But
Yeah.
Neal was direct, but Neal wouldn't do something like at least he never did to me like insult me as a human or something.
Mhm.
And I want to tell you, he was quite open minded. He believed he was a very open minded person too, and wanted
Yeah.
good things for all people. He was not
I
an
could get
us versus
a
them
sense
person.
of that. Yeah,
Yeah, he
I've
was
gotten a
definitely
sense of
not.
that.
Yeah, he was not an
That's great.
us versus them person. He was a we person and an us person, not
Yeah.
a they them person. Meaning they them meaning
Yes, I know what
not.
you mean. I'm not gonna cancel you, Ian. It's okay.
I mean, he saw us all as the same people under the same sky.
Yes.
Okay.
And what is this? This is some pencils here, and I love the perspective on this one. We got our worm's eye view looking up at this character. Is this from
This is from
Law of
Law of
Resistance?
Resistance. Before it was
Nice.
inked, there's an inked version in the dossier that I sent you. But in any event, this is a pencil and version. And I did for this one. I don't usually, but for this one, I posed for this one because
Oh,
this little.
nice.
Notice the head is really small, right? And
Yeah,
there's a lot of perspective. But this guy gets into a suit where his the bottoms of his knees to his ankles and feet move the top legs only in the
right.
upper portion. So it's like the robot is twice his body height.
Yeah,
So, but in any event, I had to design the costume. So all the characters, all the costumes, all the world was all designed by me. Um, so it wasn't just coming up with the basic plot.
and is this
Um,
one of the pages that, Sienkiewicz inked as well?
Billing this one, you'll see it. I
Okay.
think if we get to it.
Trying to see why this won't let me zoom. Maybe it has something to do with the screen share. It's not letting me.
Probably.
Let's see what
Maybe you
pops
have
up
to click
next
on it
here.
first. I don't know.
I did. Yeah, it's probably because of the screen share. Maybe it affects it. All right, let me see here. So
That's
that's
a
a
cover.
cover. Oh,
That's a
now it decided to zoom out. Well, why wouldn't it do it on
uh,
the other one? Let's see now. Yeah, this one doesn't move.
huh.
Could be
It's,
it's because it's a probably because
uh,
it's a iPhone
you might be
format.
able to do
The
like
8.
Command Plus or whatever that
Yeah,
key.
I
Yeah,
don't wanna
you don't
blow
want
it
to do
up.
that.
I
Yeah.
don't wanna blow the computer up. Well,
Yeah. So
this that's the cover.
that's the cover
Which
for
issue
wraparound cover.
is this for
This is
a
for the
singular
graphic
issue
novel.
or the okay, that's for the
No, this
trade.
is for the graphic novel. Yeah.
Nice.
And this was the
I'm
first
sensing,
drawing.
I'm
Go ahead.
sensing a little Buscema in those legs.
Okay, so besides Neil Adams, my biggest influences are Buscema and Windsor Smith.
Nice.
Barry Windsor Smith, John Buscema, Neil Adams. I mean, there's lots of artists I absolutely love. Um, Mark Silvestri, of course, I love his
Oh,
work.
yeah.
Jim's work, I always enjoy. Um,
I can see
uh,
some, Silvestri in your,
yeah,
the faces of your women.
exactly. Oh, that was
Yeah.
also because I actually, Mark, I showed him my work back in 1995 at a convention in Pittsburgh, and he told me to send my work in to him. When he got back, he could use another artist, and he wants me to send it in because he would hire me.
Wow.
But I didn't end up doing that. I ended up going back to college. I wanted to get my degree, my bachelor's. I had an associate's. I wanted to get my bachelor's, and then I went on for my master's and did post work. So I have a lot of years of education, and I was a professor I started out as a professor, an assistant professor in 1996 or
Okay.
seven, and then I became a regular. Um, not a full professor. For those who don't know, it doesn't. You don't just become a full professor right away.
Right,
You
right.
can become a lecturer, then an
Yeah.
associate, or this, that, and then there's several stages, up to like five, I think, to be a full vested professor. But in any event, yeah, I was a professor, regular professor, starting in 2001,
So you took a
somewhere
little
around there.
break from the comic industry at that point?
No,
Okay,
no.
you
I was
continued.
lecturing at night and weekends, and I worked for the government, for the Department of Defense during the day, and I
Okay.
did this as well while
So
I
I
was
need to
doing
have
those
you
other.
on my UFO episode I'm gonna do.
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah.
But this was that was inked by Joe Weems, by the way, and colored by Dean White.
And now we have you
Oh, this is me over at Pixar when I went to
over
see
at
my.
Pixar
I call them my Pixarian friends.
with the incredible statues, life size.
Yeah, it's a couple years back. I worked for Capital One, and a good number of the people at Capital One were originally Pixar employees.
Wow.
And there's not a lot of studios around. Certainly back then, a couple of years back. So um, more than a couple, several years back. So they might go to jobs at Google or Capital One.
Yeah.
So I had the pleasure, a friend of mine who was from Pixar, who was at that time working for Capital One, said they wanted to do a Jack Kirby inspired campaign for Capital One.
Okay. And then we
And
have those images, don't we?
yeah, and when he
So let
called me,
me you
yeah.
keep chatting and I'm gonna find those ones.
So so uh so it was, what a gift it was to be able to work with like people who worked at Pixar, people who worked at Marvel, people who worked at DC, and I got to work with the whole group of different talented people from
Yeah.
animation and live action, and put together this Kirby um, project. There they are. You just passed
There
them.
they are. Yeah,
Yeah,
right up here.
yeah, and there's more down and below too. But yeah, let's take a look at those.
Yep.
Yeah, so first, these look like regular posters, right? But
Right.
they're actually interactive posters. If you
Oh,
touch
cool.
them in different parts, the character will speak to you, and then it
Wow.
plays music and sound effects and everything else. And what they wanted to do, their idea was to make a campaign where you could teach people how to be careful and how to invest their money properly, how to save their money, how to, make these kind of personal choices, but by choosing the kind of person you are. And these are become sort of like your avatar, like the
Right.
frugal master or the flexor. And it's, the balanced optimist, et cetera, et
I'm
cetera.
just blown away by how well you did Kirby. Like how well
Well,
you captured the essence of his style.
I did my best. Actually, if you see Captain Cautious there,
Yeah.
in the red on the
Yep.
left.
That's a classic
So
Kirby
I
pose too.
I was at a comic book shop in New Jersey at the time, and I asked the guy, "Do you have a pencil, a pen, and a piece of paper?" And he said, "Sure, Ian." And so I sat down. I said, "You have a table anywhere?" So he had a table I think it was in the back room. I can't remember. I sat down
Yeah.
and I did this drawing.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I had to get it to him in about 30 minutes. So I did this drawing and I sent it to him. And I said, well, this is my best Kirby for the moment.
So this was your like kind of pitch to
That
them
was,
as
yeah,
far as
yeah,
doing this campaign?
yeah.
Wow.
But, I got to meet Kirby, spend time with Kirby. Kirby taught me a lot of stuff about
Yeah.
storytelling,
Well, I
about
gotta
choice making.
okay, so let's look at a couple more of these, but then I want to talk about
Sure,
that
sure.
because so few people got to interact with him and those that did are just so fortunate. Like I gotta pick your brain on that. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So
So
then
they
they
have
kind of
these
had their
giant,
own.
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go for it.
They have these giant screens over at Capital One cafes. And the first location that they chose was Glendale, California, right near what's referred to as the Americana.
Okay.
And little did I know that I would end up living in that area years later. But I went to visit the show and I took these photos. As a matter of fact, I almost got myself in a lot of trouble for taking pictures.
Uh-oh.
And they said,
Did you
"Sir, you
pull
can't." What's that?
hey, I drew them?
I did, but they didn't believe me.
Oh
So
yeah. They're
so
like,
I had to
sure, buddy.
call corporate, and corporate called the owner of the, oh, not the owner, the person, the head manager and security
Yeah.
there, and said, "No, no, no, he's okay. This is his work he did for us. He was the head of the camp."
Wow.
Originally, I was brought on by my buddy Mark Holmes, Mark Cordell Holmes. He spent many years over at Pixar, about 13, I think, or 16. And
Okay.
then he went to uh, EA, and he brought me on. He was the art director for the posters. And then he was not there for the second part. So I got to co art direct. And that also gave
Nice.
me, I had to write the budget, I had to plan the budget. Uh, some of the people that came onto the project with me were Sean Galloway, Cheeks. Most people know him as
Oh
Cheeks,
yeah. Yeah.
and he's a dear friend of mine. I love him very
Amazing,
much.
amazing artist.
We've given each other jobs at times, which has been
Nice.
really great. When we really fit for each other.
I'm
But
really blown away by these hands.
oh, thanks.
Those are
Um,
those are amazing.
if you
Like
notice those,
women's hands especially like can be super tricky.
yeah, yeah. This one I was happy with. I liked the Mellow Maven.
Yeah,
It
that's
feels
really cool.
Kirby. It feels.
It
I
feels
happen to,
Kirby, but I can kind of see some of you in it too.
of course. Well,
Yeah.
there's a thing where, um, well, I can say that I'm a big fan of. Uh, I wasn't when I was younger, but I'm a big fan of Kirby's DC run. Even
Yeah.
though it's very graphic, and a lot of people seem to think that the Fantastic Four was better, I loved Mike Royer over Jack. I did,
Yeah.
and even Coletta when he took his time,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
a
could
lot of
see the
people
guy was good.
yeah, a lot of people give him a lot of hate and say he ruined Jack's stuff, but I there's a lot of his stuff over Jack that I like.
Well, Jack went through a lot with that because people really spoke in his ear about, but
Right.
no one ever thought that work was anything more than the moment they were making it. They never thought
Yeah,
it was going to be
exactly.
forever reprinted, giant pictures. And it just, quite honestly, it wasn't the sensibility for comics at the time. People
Yeah.
didn't have a world of bagging and boarding and packing and collecting and
Yeah.
price. Uh, some people did it, but it was incredibly small. It was not a world like today. You can't judge that from this time. It just doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. I mean, it might feel right to the person who wants to be right, but I'm
That's
sorry.
a total Kirby shield right there. I've seen
Yeah,
that. I've
uh,
seen him do that shield.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Capturing that essence was really important. Thin line, thick line, bold line, curve,
Now,
overlapping.
did you ink all of this with a brush?
Uh, I don't know. I inked one version, and I don't
Okay.
know if this was the one I inked or or might have been somebody else who inked it. Does it
Gotcha.
say?
I don't think so. I
John
don't think
Floyd
they
might have inked it.
yeah. Oh, and there it is in the
Yeah,
cafe. You can
I
see it
wanted
in
you
the
to be able to
background
see
there.
the, yeah,
Yeah.
the fact that it was in an actual cafe. I
Now, is
still go
this
in
like
there.
in an is it so this is like a big bank then if they got a cafe in
It's
there?
actually, it has no. It's They wanted to be more casual about it.
Okay.
It's a cafe.
Oh, there we go. We got some more
That's
law
law of
of resistance
resistance.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a cafe, but it has, you can speak to an expert in there.
Okay.
So they have people on site to discuss investing, but
Nice.
essentially it's a cafe. Okay, so let's move on.
I was gonna say, you said there was a couple others
If you scroll
below
down,
here. Yeah, let me.
there. That was just the individual images of it. Oh,
Oh
there's
yeah,
also
these.
one to the far left, one row down. If you click on
That
that,
one.
that'll give you an example of what I had to do for the individual to make these sort of animatic, as it were.
Okay. Okay. There we
Animatic,
go.
for those who are not familiar, is a moving storyboard that's timed with sound, usually. Sorry, the image is very small, so it's coming
No,
in a
it's all
little
good.
grainy.
Yeah.
But so there's the young version of the guy, the older, mature version of
Right.
the guy
And the
in the
superhero.
in his hero costume, and the guy doing his regular thing.
Yeah.
All his eggs in one basket, I guess, or
I
something
like
to
it.
that effect. But
And
the
then
idea was to get that sort of Kirby feel, right?
these are the
Yeah.
individual
That
ones here.
that one was in this one I can't take 100% credit for at all. This was see John Floyd Inc. This one,
Yep,
um,
yep. I
this
think you
was
I think you must ink that other one because this one looks
yeah, it looks
the
different.
inks look a little different. Yeah.
Yeah, John unfortunately passed, um, and we started working. He wanted me to work on. I did a Wolverine um, at a convention, and he asked in pencil, and he asked if he could do an inked version of it, and I said sure. And he did an inked version. It was beautiful. As a matter of fact, I found it on Pinterest, credited to Barry Windsor Smith.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and well, he inked over Windsor Smith on Rune back in
Gotcha.
the early days of Valiant.
Right.
So he wanted to do a story together, a short story, and pitch it to Marvel, and I never got around to it. And then my dear friend passed.
I'm sorry to hear that.
If you want to quickly scroll through you'll see the Wolverine.
Well, I'm
Um,
just
okay,
captivated by something here. I don't want to be I appreciate the female form, and I am more fond of the
the
derriere, which you
Derriere,
captured very well there.
and
That's
and
a proper artistic term, right?
yes, it is. So so in all fairness, in my book, you will see derrieres of males and females. I'm not
There you go.
a gender biased derriere artist.
You got to
Um,
have the well-defined, curvaceous booties, man.
well, the truth of the matter is, everyone in my book is designed after someone I know,
Oh, okay.
who shall remain nameless. But
There you go. We're not going to say anything.
yeah, but so there, it's actually designed from real people who, and
Nice.
I don't think the issue was, do I downplay the woman's body
Right.
or the male's body to emphasize their brains or their
Mm-hmm.
intellect? You can't.
Yeah.
You can read intellect on a comic. You can't see intellect. Maybe if I give him a giant head, like forehead or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
But
exactly.
outside of that, the thing is, women come in all shapes and sizes, and it doesn't
Absolutely.
define whether they're intelligent or not. Whether
No.
whether they're attractive or not doesn't define whether they're intelligent. Whether they're curvaceous or not doesn't define whether they're intelligent or not. Or they have great prowess, internal power. So I don't, I just draw a person if they happen to be
This is given this next image here is really given Silvestri vibes.
oh well, the inker on that is Joe Weems.
Okay.
I penciled, of course. Joe Weems inks,
So
and the
that's
face.
interesting because, you know, a lot of times what we associate with a certain penciler stylistically can be because of who's inking them too.
Oh yeah, if you look
So,
at so I'll tell you about that. So
yeah,
everybody was pretty big names on the book, which I was grateful for, but that also comes with them having a lot of responsibility to other publishers.
right.
So one way to manage this 130 some odd page book was to do two versions, styles of ink. So the inkers that were more earthy, more natural, more scratchy, they would ink the world that our characters came from,
Oh,
which
okay.
was a world, if you would imagine our different centuries kind of combined,
Mm-hmm.
where like there's like a hint of Roman, a hint of Baroque, a hint of the Renaissance, a hint of modern day. So it feels more Game of Thrones, if you will. This is before Game of Thrones TV show came out. I think when we were originally doing the original designs, but
Yeah.
ultimately it ended up having that sort of relative similarity in that part alone.
Right.
In any event, so the more natural sort of inkers that were not as rock and roll heavy metal, would do the other world, and
Mm,
when they would be on our Earth, we would do it with a more sleek heavy metal style, like
that's
Matt
interesting.
Banning or Joe Weems. Actually, that
Yeah.
was a suggestion by Jim Kruger.
Okay.
So if we were going to have different inkers, we could at least have that feeling, that sort of that feeling you're now on another planet.
Right. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So speaking of which, Jim Kruger was the reference for that phase.
Okay.
I stylized it, and then et cetera, et cetera. That was the cover. I did individual covers for the individual issues, and they appear in the graphic novel as like chapter breaks.
Right. This
So
one's
this is
really cool.
this is interior. This is Joe Weems, Dean White coloring, my pencils.
Yeah, the colors are beautiful on this.
Yeah, yeah. I would say Dean has a bit of a handle on coloring.
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
Yeah, Dean White. Yeah,
I mean, it
he
almost looks like watercolor, like the background and everything. Like,
it's just I
really
said to him,
cool.
I said I really want to get that sort of those close-ups and those real wide shots and close-ups and
Yeah.
I want to get that feeling that he's being burned in the sun almost. And It's very
I think you
statuesque.
captured it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
captured
very.
that for sure.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to stretch his limbs a little, like the legs,
Mm-hmm.
make him a little more lanky. Uh, I got that from Neal. Neal tended to, because Neal was tall, so Neal would do
Yeah.
these sort of longer Batman. Like
Yeah.
they weren't these bulky Batmans of
No, his
today.
characters always looked very graceful.
Yes, and one of the things I realized was that Neal would kind of give them a little length.
Yeah.
And so I
I'm
tried to
gonna
channel that.
so yeah, definitely captured it. I'm gonna turn the screen share off for a moment, and I
Mhm.
want to talk about Kirby
Okay.
because you mentioned the times that you got to spend with Jack, and I've got to hear about this. This might actually be where we kind of end the podcast out
Sure.
because I
Sure.
have a feeling that you have quite a bit to tell of what you took away from those invaluable interactions with Jack. So first, like, how did that come about? Like, how did you get to be able to
Okay.
have the opportunity to connect with him?
Well, it wasn't an opportunity. Excuse me, I'm moving some things because
No
I want to see
worries.
if I have something of Jack's on the. I usually have Jack's work. Whoops. I usually have. Well, that'll wake anybody up watching the program.
We'll save the
Um,
pieces.
yeah, I usually have something of Jack's on my table everywhere I work. So I'm not seeing it
I,
here.
I
I
think
have a
that's a good
Neil you,
habit.
huh?
I said I think that's a good habit.
And
I
I have
could see. Look,
Neil
see.
Adams.
Watch. All you have to do is this. Just reach to your right, and then you can pull out some kind of
There you go.
Kirby
There you go.
something. I mean, there's about probably about 6 or 7 Kirby books on that
That's
section
awesome.
as far as like art of Kirby.
I don't
Like
keep a lot of things.
I'm sure you have most of these. You got the pencils and inks one.
Sure. I mean, how could
Oh
I
yeah.
not? Right.
See. Yeah, there's some
And
good stuff on there.
well, so I was a teenager. I was not long out of high school, and my brother and I were really trying to figure out what to do with our lives. We knew we loved
Yeah.
comic books. I mean, my brother is really, even from an early age, people don't realize, they see his comic work, they don't realize he can do realism very well. He
Yeah.
was doing realistic illustrations, actually even more realistic than I was doing. I was doing more expressionist stuff, but my brother was doing realistic drawings from the time we were teenagers, maybe 13, 14. Um, he chooses to do stylistic work mostly because of the inspiration of Jack Kirby. But in
Yeah.
any event, Jack was appearing in New York. It might have been the Big Apple Con at that time. I don't know what show it was really called. It might have been something else. My brother probably knows. But he wasn't able to attend that day, that weekend. But I did get on a bus. I had almost no money. Like people
Yeah.
asked me, "Did you get photos?" I said, well, I was a broke
Right.
kid, teenager in the late '80s, early '90s, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And no, no, I lived alone. I had a night job as a security. I made, I think, 450 an hour. Yeah, I rode a bicycle back and forth to work,
Right.
on the highway, by the way. So I
Oh,
wasn't going to be carrying at those days didn't have cell phones or anything.
oh
You either
no.
owned a camera or you didn't.
Yep.
And I definitely didn't own a camera. So it just has to be chalked up to history and memory. That
Yeah.
being said, I went into the city. I beelined it up straight. I had some artwork, some sketches I had done with Guy. Um, I would say they were mediocre at best, not at
Hmm.
worst. At best, at worst, they were worse than mediocre. Um,
Right.
Sometimes you can draw really well, but translating that to comic books is not easy. It's a skill that's developed over time. And I went into this, I saw this big hall open, and I'll cut back to this, but I saw a big hall open. Because I saw a long line of people with portfolios. I just wanted to know if this was the line to have your portfolio viewed.
Yeah.
So I walked up to a guy. It's a big room, long tables, and just the guy sitting in the middle eating a sandwich. I figured no harm. I'm just going to ask him, and then if it's the line, I'll get in the back of the line. So I said, I apologize for interrupting your meal, your lunch. I said, but can you tell me, is this the line to get my work viewed? And he says, puts his sandwich down. He does something like this. And he says, let me take a look at it. He said, what's your name? I said, Ian Dorian. He says, Bill Sienkiewicz.
Wow.
And he looked at my work. And needless to say, I was very lucky I did not get my butt kicked by the people on the line. It was
Yeah.
not my intention. I apologize to all of you, any of you who might have been there in the '90s on that line.
Yeah.
I did not intend to do that to you. Um, I owe you a head sketch. I didn't say that. Anyway, somebody will find me, right?
Yep.
Anyway, so I did that. I got really great criticism and suggestions. And then I beelined it for Jack Kirby. Now, to be clear, I had two choices. One day, Jack Kirby was there. The other day, John Buscema was there,
Oh man.
Big John.
That's a hard
And I was like,
that's a hard decision,
oh,
man.
how do I decide? How do I decide? To
Yeah.
this day, I regret not having that chance with John. Like, it
Yeah.
almost makes me cry. But um,
Yep.
for someone who loves comics, they would understand, especially someone who draws comics would deeply
Absolutely.
understand that it almost makes you cry that you couldn't meet these
His
people
section of books is right next to Jack's on my shelf.
for good
So
reason.
they occupy the
That's
same
right.
space there.
That's right. And so I met Jack. I walked up to Jack. He was very kind, very loving, big smile after everything he said. He'd give you
Yeah.
this big smile, say something clever or a quip or something, and then
Yep.
and he was a shorter guy, and so he would stand up on his toes a lot when he spoke. He would sort of expand out, like
Right.
the chest and look you in the eye and say something and give you
Very
a deep look,
expressive,
deep
like
look.
his characters.
Yes, you could see it boiling in him, all that
Yeah.
passion. And we spoke for a while. Interestingly enough, there were not a lot of people around him. They would
Yeah.
come and go, three, four, two, one, and then there would be just the two of us. And after a short period of time, getting really deep into conversation, he could tell I was very intrigued by art. I knew every writer, artist, editor, assistant editor. I knew every colorist, every letterer. I know who lettered what book. I knew, this was just something Guy and I did. We wanted
Yep.
to know every person on the team. We knew every name, publisher, it didn't matter. And so he was quite impressed. So he said, "Why don't you come behind the table?" I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, come behind the table, Ian. Sit here with me. Let's talk." Roz came over, said, "Everything, you want some water or something?" I said, "No, no, thank you." And so we started talking. I said, "Thank you, Roz." And of course, I knew who Roz was. If you knew Jack and you were that
Oh
passionate
yeah,
about comics, you knew who Roz was,
absolutely.
because it was always Jack and Roz, right? So Roz made it possible for Jack to sit there and do the things he did, right? I had the pleasure not to go off topic. It's on topic, but it's off this. But very quickly, I was in a show. Uh,
Oh, some 3D.
yes. And it
Yep.
says here Kirby Museum, the Jack Kirby Museum, and it says Kirby Vision, July 2024. This was the Corey Helford Gallery, and this is in
Oh,
Los
amazing.
Angeles. And these
Yep.
3D glasses, they did 3D versions of some of Jack's pages, and they did them giant.
I
And
was
you could,
so jealous. I
and
saw some pictures of people getting to attend that. It
uh,
looked so
I actually
amazing.
had a piece in that show. Half the show
Nice.
was Jack's, and the other half was the people influenced by Jack. I got a
Nice.
piece in there, and it sold. It was one of the first pieces sold. It was sold before the show opened, actually, for viewers that
Amazing.
came earlier. And there's a piece in that portfolio of the thing holding two kids that was in that show, and that's the piece that sold.
Oh, okay. Let's
It's
pull
a
that up real
gouache
quick.
piece.
Yeah, we can keep chatting
Yeah.
about
Well, and
your
you pull that
Kirby
up, I'll just keep
interaction.
talking about Jack.
Yeah, perfect.
So Jack starts to explain to me. Well, let me rephrase. I asked Jack a ton of questions. What's the most important thing in a comic book? He looks at me and gives me the quick answer, and then he gives me the more deep answer. The quick answer is you're the most important element in a comic book.
Right.
And I wasn't sure if it was the reader or the artist, but it came clear to me later during a conversation with Joe Kubert when I was working at the Joe Kubert School. He clarified some things that Jack had said to me years previous.
Yeah.
Um, uh, this piece was done as an anti-war piece and I. This is not a choosing sides. This is an anti-war piece. The side
Yes.
is peace, and the child there is wearing the typical colors and
Yep.
typical scarf, as it were, that represents Palestine, and the young boy is wearing a yarmulke.
Such a
Um,
powerful piece
and
and you really captured the essence of the thing there.
yeah, I wanted to be true to Jack, and Jack, though he believed in fighting enemies, he also believed he wanted peace for everyone.
Yep.
He and Stan both. That's where they can, whether you like Stan or not, or this or that, or the relationship between the two. I can tell you that they both believed in uh, um, unity and
Yeah.
peace and understanding. And they both have spoken very clearly about that publicly. So I
Yeah,
thought it was.
on more
Go
than
ahead.
one occasion, I've heard
Yeah,
Jack and Stan talking on the along those lines.
and that's how I learned a lot of my concepts from the comic books, the moral questions they asked and so forth.
Right.
And they would do it without not always hitting you over the head. Oftentimes, it was allowing you to understand it by way of the story
Yeah.
and come to your own answers. But in this case, so I did this. This was no one knows this really. A few people that are friends, but I got hurt, and I was doing something for the homeless project, and I fell. I was carrying a bunch of things, and I fell, and it tore my muscles,
Yep.
and I
You were
couldn't
just
draw.
finally kind of on the mend, like getting through that
That's
when we
correct.
first had you on the podcast
Oh
with your
yeah.
brother.
Oh yeah. It was a struggle to sit there and not show that I was in pain.
Yeah.
But I went 6 months unable to use this arm, which is my drawing arm, and which means no real work. I did one
Yeah.
job that I got through a company called the Store Department. Aaron Soud and Bill Thompson. Bill was one of my old students back at the Cubert School, and Aaron Soud worked for Top Cow. And they're both live action storyboard artists these days. And they work on, all the blockbuster films. And they have helped me get work when I needed work with the non-union productions.
Right.
And I'm deeply grateful, and I love them both very much. Um, that being said, where was I? Hey,
So, just
Jack.
those the
Jack
interaction with
began
Jack, and you
to
were able to do
yeah,
the thing in the museum at the
correct. So
Kirby
Jack
Museum.
Jack uh, Rand Hoppy, by the way, was the big part of that show. So I need to recognize Rand for that
Yeah,
show.
he's heavily involved with
Yeah,
continuing to showcase Jack's work and continue that legacy.
yeah. He specifically invited me to the show
Nice.
to be a part of the show. But that being said, a
So
few things I learned.
Jack calls you behind the table and just starts literally answering any questions you have about creating comics and
Well,
everything else.
the interesting thing is Jack wanted to know about me also. He asked me about my family. He was like so Jack. He was just a
Yeah.
good person, to think this man saw war, he fought in deadly battles. This guy
Yeah.
was the real deal, you know. And here he is, uh, creating this legacy for the rest of the world. It's like, other creators, no offense, Disney and all of them they brought on incredible talents to create things. And they did start some of those things their own. But
Yeah.
Jack, I've never, if you look back in history, try to find someone who created thousands upon thousands of characters, left them as a legacy that then became an entire lexicon of characters that would be used for generations and disseminated around the world. I can't think of anybody that was more
Yeah.
prolific, that did it themselves. No one other than Jack Kirby. I mean,
Yeah.
deep respect for the talent that's out there and all the different generations. Like Bernini did many sculptures, this and that,
Yeah.
and
It's
certainly
just a
Hokusai with his prints. Go ahead.
staggering body of work, right? Like it's just the body of work that not only all the characters he created, but the stories he came up with, and it's just
But
astronomical.
in all fairness, Stan pretty much would let Jack do anything he wanted.
Yeah.
And in some ways, Jack had free reign. So Stan would maybe discuss something over the phone. And I spoke to Stan about this too. Stan would discuss with him over the phone or at the office. And John Romita Sr. Has concurred that this is true.
Yeah.
Stan would have a conversation, and then Jack would go back and do his drawings. Jack didn't always give what he got,
Yeah.
um, uh, but yeah, sometimes he'd get like a spark, and he'd come back with a flame. If that makes any sense. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. The Human
Yep.
Torch. But
Yep.
anyway, you get my point. So, Galactus and the Surfer are a perfect example. Stan was very clear. He said, I didn't know who these characters were. These were amazing
No.
characters,
Yeah, and he said
and there they
he
were.
thought if somebody was the as powerful as Galactus, he would have a herald, and so Jack just came up with the Silver Surfer. It's like, yeah, he needs to have a herald. Like it was so obvious to him. Like, yeah, of
I wouldn't have
course.
thought of a herald. I mean,
No.
come on, man. So it just
Yeah.
lets you know that Jack was a deep thinker, even though he may not have been a smooth talker. He was a deep
Yeah.
thinker. And even though he might have had more of it was spoken more like the average Joe, as it were. With all due respect to everyone, it's just for the sake of this discussion. But he was clear, he was concise, you knew what he felt, you knew what he meant, and you learned something every time you spoke to him. And so Jack told
Yeah.
me that he said, Ian, I don't always draw the perspective realistic. He used the word right, but he meant realistic,
Yeah.
because what's right is what works, right? But he said, I didn't always draw it right. I don't always do the anatomy right, but I bring you into the world. I bring the world into you, I bring my characters into your world and you into my characters and my world. And once I've brought you in, once I've hooked you with a big image, a powerful moment, you're along for the ride. He said, what you want to do as a professional is you want to grab
Yeah.
them and say, come with me. And so I've always kept that mindset, that I want to grab them and say, come with me. The difference between, say, my work and, say, my brother's work is my brother is much more literal in that sense, in the way he draws. It's
Yeah.
literally strong, powerful, in your face. You're going to get it. My work
Yep.
tends to be a bit more nuanced in that sense, where I'm drawing you in by maybe light drama, emotion, but controlled emotion. You can see even the aggressive or powerful people are almost controlling their aggression. The reason
Yeah.
why is because I believe that, from my logic, I learned that from looking at Neal Adams and um, and Tex, because Tex can really show expressive physical emotion, but he also shows deep psychological emotion in his work. And I I've never felt that I've ever captured it anywhere near like him. But then we can never
Hmm.
do with our heroes, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure.
but in any event, I saw it in other people's work, and it reminded me of what Jack had told me at that table. Jack also told me that I had to be honest to myself. I had to be true to myself, who I am. He said, you can learn how to draw like other people, that's fine. But somewhere along the line, you've got to be you. And Joe Kubert concurred that with me when I was teaching at the Kubert School. I would go in every Wednesday. Joe and Erwin Hazen, Hy Eisman, Joe Kubert, and myself, four of us would have lunch together every Wednesday. And then at the end of close of day, I would usually go to Joe's studio or Adam's studio, which was in the school, and sit with them. I learned a lot from Adam too. Adam was really wonderful to me.
Yeah,
Um,
he's always been one of my favorites. I love Andy's work too, but I've always kind of gravitated a little more towards Adam stuff. So
I love
I
them for
definitely,
different reasons.
yeah, and very
Andy's,
different stylistically. Like you can see the underlying themes are there. Like between their styles, there's a lot of connective tissue, but they're similar to you and your brother. They're also very unique in their own regard.
yeah, because Tex said this to me once. I think it came from a movie originally. He said, Ian, it's about how you put the emphasis on the syllable. So,
Yes.
and I was like, that makes sense. You can tell a person's character by the drawings they do, you know, and what they wish to express. It comes out. It's like a footprint or a thumbprint.
Yeah.
And so next time you look at a style, realize that you're looking at the inner workings of the person, of the artist.
That's deep.
So take a moment, say to yourself, what is this? What does this work like? So Jack said, be yourself for that reason. The thing is, he said, be your best self. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do all the time.
For sure.
And where I would love to be more like Jack and more like Neal and more like a lot of people that I really admire, is to get even better at not questioning my work, just going straight at it, do it and move forward, move on. And,
Yeah.
you know, um, it's not a fantasy. It does exist, even though it doesn't exist. And that is, this, what is it? Imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Imposter syndrome, just so anyone out there, if you think that people you believe are successful because they worked on certain types of projects, um, or you may believe they're successful, I want you to know there's never a day where deep down inside, most of us, if not all of us, have the feelings of imposter syndrome. And it doesn't go away because you can't have imposter syndrome unless you're achieving something,
Right.
because if you're not achieving something, well, then there's no need for imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
So the
that makes a lot
more,
of sense.
yeah, so people who are pushing themselves beyond even sometimes their own limits will often live with imposter syndrome all the time through their work. Actors, I know directors, I know writers in film and cinema. I know artists and I know office workers and military people, and we all feel in some ways like maybe are we really good enough? Are we really this? Are we really that? And that in one side it can hold you back, but on the other side it can keep you working really really hard.
Yeah, and keep you balanced, right? So you
Mhm.
don't get too a silly statement, but you don't get too big for your britches, right? Like
Yeah,
it,
but
it, it is, it
yeah,
might be an internal balancing mechanism to try to, keep our ego somewhat under control and not get it too overblown and keep us striving to be better and to improve.
agreed. So to cut to the chase with that, I would say that what I would like to be more like Jack in that way is sometimes like Jack didn't stop to think whether he was doing a perfect finger on panel 3.
Yeah,
Jack drew, and then he drew the next page, and then he drew the next page. He didn't have time. One of the benefits and the debts of his age was that you had to figure out a very quick and direct approach to drawing, and you had to become incredibly prolific at it
yeah.
and not stop to think, just to work and trust your skill would make sense of it all. And
I
that's
think
one of
he
the things I
didn't.
love about Jack.
Yeah, he didn't constrain himself through a lot of the ways that a lot of us do. It's like you said, he didn't get hung up on that one little thing that was maybe incorrect, and he just continued to produce more and more work. And that's probably how he just did an insane amount of work other than putting in the hours, because he said he just would sit there at the board till like 4 in the morning or whatever, because he
Yeah,
needed to pay the bills. But if he was getting stuck on something being too perfect, he never would have completed as many pages as he did, because like the count of how many pages that people know that he did, like published work, it's insane. Like it's in the tens of thousands.
yeah. And so, in all fairness to everyone, keep in mind that the majority of work that was published was never inked by Jack. It was
Yeah,
inked by someone else. So very rare that we saw just Jack. Anyway,
yeah.
it's very rare that we would see that was from Willie's Just Jack. Anyway,
Yeah.
great show. Love that show. Um, but uh, I think sometimes when you're on the deadline can be your friend in that sense because
Yeah.
it makes you make a choice and move on.
Yeah,
We
it's
have,
the whole finished, not perfect thing. It's kind of
yeah,
the process you have to follow, especially when you're on a
yeah.
deadline.
I saw Joe Medina speak, and I met him. This is like 20 years ago, maybe more. And uh, he gave a talk at a panel, but it was really just him. And it was for people who wanted to know about the industry. And he said to one of the younger artists, I was also younger at the time, so was Joe. Um, 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 he was asked, "Do you see the deadline as getting in the way of your work?" And he said, "Oh, well, no, because a deadline is part of the work."
Right.
He said it's not a thing against the work, it's part of the job, it's part of the process. Don't look at it as a thing against your work. He said it is part of the entire thing. So
Yeah,
the
it's part of the
deadline,
process.
yes. So if you look at it that way, it's not your enemy. It could in some ways, like I said, when you're down at the deadline, you make those direct choices and you move on the way Jack did. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's when the deadline can be your best friend because you don't overthink. You don't have time to think if the face was a little, the smile was a little wider or the
Yeah.
lighting was turned a little more to the left, because
Yeah.
I can get caught up on those nuances and
Oh, for sure.
I call it noodle roni because I just like,
Yeah.
you know, and you gotta step back. And that's one of the things I learned from Bill Sienkiewicz. And it was Jack said something similar to me. Joe said something similar. Tex said something similar, and then finally Bill Sienkiewicz said something similar to me. He called me up and he gave me great advice. And I don't have any problems with sharing this with other people. I want them to know that we're always learning from other people, no matter how good other people think we might be.
Yeah.
And Bill called me up and very politely was, "Hey, buddy, I just wanted to talk to you about something," because he was inking my work now. And I'll cut to the chase. He said, if you're drawing two people talking, going under a doorway, and there's one or two words, yes, no, you don't need to draw the figure moving with all the folds accurate and the bend and the head turned and the mouth not like this, but like the
Yeah.
eye a little like that, not like that. He said, no, you could do that with a silhouette.
Yep.
Boom, boom, done. He said, there's a rhythm to every page and every story.
Yeah.
This is the key part from Bill to me to you out there. Um, Bill said, and I quote, besides Ian, I love you, you're incredible. But anyway, he did say that, which made me cry. My
I
bubbler,
love it. I love
But he calls me his bubbler. One time, Adam Kubert said, "Wait a minute, I thought I was your bubbler." Anyway,
it.
but to cut to the chase, he said, "Ian, it's because," he said, "I'm not insulting your work. Your work is beautiful." He said, "But what I'm telling you is to put the emphasis, going back to the emphasis on the syllable, the
Yeah.
emphasis does not need to be, you don't need the energy to be put into that panel. It doesn't need to be a big panel. It doesn't need to be highly detailed." He said, "A silhouette will do, especially to keep the rhythm of that dialogue and that pacing." He said, "When you get to the moment where they pass through the door and a bullet shoots the other guy and the brother or sister drops to the ground or child and the person picks up the child, that's when you want the big close up with all the
Yes.
details because that's when
Yep.
you want to be drawn into that moment.
Yeah.
You want to be there with that person. You want to be in that experience." He said, Ian, so when you do that kind of work on every panel, you kind of haven't done it on any panel
Well, and you take away the impact
of that
that
moment.
that moment's
So,
gonna have,
so
right?
it's been a real lesson for me, even in
Yeah.
this was still several years ago, but it was when I returned to comics. I was a sculptor and professor and I worked for the government and all that. But uh, it was a real reminder and in some ways new lesson for me to look at the pacing and rhythm of panels in a new way.
Yeah.
But then there's times when people underdo it. You get to a big moment and there's not much to the big moment isn't any different than the small moment.
Yeah, there's no oomph. There's no
Right.
emphasis. Yeah.
So what I do now, I did it before, but I do it with a little more focus after Bill spoke to me. What I do now is I think, what is the purpose of this scene? Like, what value does it have in the story, the beats of the story? What is, and my brother told me to do this too. Think about what's the most important elements in that page. And then I think about where I can be as expeditious as possible, expedient, just
Hmm.
as shorthanded as I need to be to get the point across, and which panel needs the most work, the most effort, and that's going to sell that moment. So
Yeah.
I think also when I draw anatomy, I was an anatomy professor for 23, 24 years for stone carving, clay modeling, and charcoal drawing and oil painting for the figure. So I have a little bit of a background with the figure.
Tiny bit of
So,
knowledge
so,
there.
but here's what I know: only save that now for when it's truly needed.
Yeah.
And also, I know that that is not just a sensibility for selling the story right, but it's a process for getting through your book. When you know where to put the emphasis and where to pull back, when you know when the words mean more and when the image means more, the details or just the silhouette will cover it or the suggestion, you have to know those different things in order to get through your book.
Yeah.
Because if you noodle every page, it'll take you 40 years to do a book. And most of that isn't going to even matter. If there's one word and it says, sunrise, boom, done, done.
Yeah.
You're on the next panel. You were there for a second, maybe less. So to inundate an image with an extraneous amount of lines, even if that sentence makes no sense, but you get it.
Hmm.
Uh, um, uh, uh, it's not necessary. So I have to really think, and you'll see. Sometimes I'll juxtapose big things. Joe Kuber taught me that, and Jack Kirby told me. Jack and Joe told me the same thing. Push your expression of your panels. Push, get deep, really close up, and then pull back, and really know. And so I learned it from all these people, right? Rags Morales, I assisted him for a while on Superman stuff, and what a great, incredible illustrator.
Yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
yeah, great guy too. I love him. He makes great breakfast. Anyway, yeah, he was always so kind to me. He's always been wonderful. Um, deeply passionate person, similar to Jack in that way, deep passion.
Yeah.
Um, so I was told, to bring, the camera, move that camera, know when to pull back for action, show the action. Like I get frustrated when I see it in movies and comics, and you just see a fist, a hand, a foot.
Hmm.
Now, Gene Colan did that with Daredevil, but he did it for a purpose. He wanted people to feel a little confused in the beginning of a fight. And he was trying to figure out how to do that. So he just showed a fist, a foot, a hand, part of a head, and then he'd go and pull wide for the whole shot. The
Yeah.
gorgeous drawing that only Gene Colan could draw. I'm
Show
sorry.
you how everything is connected. Yeah.
Yeah, filmmakers do that, but it frustrates me. I know sometimes if the actors are not very good at fighting, they're not trained
Hmm.
fighters like some of us.
Yeah.
Um, you can't really cue them for certain moves. It doesn't look convincing. So
No.
it's better to do a lot of close-up shots of fists and hands,
It
and then
makes
just
sense.
pile them together, and then it
Yep.
looks like a fight. But
Yeah.
you'll see that the deeper, more emotional moments where you're captivated in the fight scene is when the camera pulls back and lets you stay in that moment for a while with the
Oh,
fighters
for sure.
as they move forward in the z-axis towards and away from the camera, and also as they move across the screen, and you can
There's an
feel
amazing in the first season of Daredevil on Netflix, there was that extended hallway shot fight scene
exactly.
where
That's
and
exactly what
that's
I'm
like,
talking about.
bro, amazing.
That was actually, I believe, inspired by a Japanese film that I don't remember the title. Forgive me, I'm sorry. And somebody on the comments might know.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was just this scene where you just follow this guy beating up this hordes of people just coming at him. It's like a superhero movie, but he's not a
Yeah.
superhero. He's just a determined person.
Yep.
And the camera moves with him. It's all wide, and the camera moves with him, and you're just so caught up in every little thing he's boom, I was
Hmm.
and that I love that in
That's the stuff
comics.
that works.
I
Yeah.
love that in comics. Jack would pull back a lot more than people think, and then he'd come real close with the power punch. You know, um, remember, Jack wanted to be in animation. So since
Yes.
Jack wanted to be in animation, he kind of brought that sort of deep uh, love of animation to pages by pushing that Z-axis perspective.
Yeah, another thing about Jack's work, the tool he utilized to convey all of that was his extreme foreshortening and perspective.
Like
Like I can't remember who.
foreshortening, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
force
and I can't
perspective.
remember. Yeah, force perspective, and I can't remember who it was on the one Kirby documentary that described it this way. I think it was one of the artists, and he said basically that with a Kirby figure in perspective, the foot was in.
One time zone
Yep, and the fist was in a
in
different,
another time
the
zone.
foot was
That
in the
might have
past.
been John Senior, but I think Guy would know.
Yeah, yeah, it
Um,
might have been. I just
mm,
watched it the other day too. I should remember.
it
I've
might have been Len
rewatched that.
Wein or some. But
Yeah,
either way, we remember that moment because we all thought that, right? And then when he
yeah.
said that on camera, we were like, "Yes, that's it." But Jack
It put
told me,
into words
yeah.
what we were perceiving and maybe couldn't put into words.
So Jack told me, he said, "Ian, you don't always have to get it right to get it right. So it, you have to understand, Jack could if he wanted to.
Oh yeah, you can
People
look at
think
his
that he
work from
couldn't.
the
It's
40s.
not
You
true.
look at his stuff in the 40s and he did proper anatomy, he did proper faces, like
Yeah, but he got past that. He got beyond that. He got
yeah.
to the point of expressing. And so that's what I look for when I draw. If I draw a well drawn picture, I may rip it up, throw it out, crumble it up if it does not express the emotional content that I'm looking for. I
Yeah.
look for the emotional content that I'm trying to express, and then the character, the drawing follows the emotional content, not the other way around. And so I would
Yeah.
say, even if you have to get it a little exaggerated to express the idea, like if someone's leaping towards you, you're going to push that, right? And I'm getting back to Jack. You're going to
Yep.
stretch that. Now, it might not look that way. Like an animator might say, "Oh, that picture's off model," but their pictures move with sound.
Yep.
Ours don't. We have to express multiple time periods, or we have to slow down time. We have to stretch time. We have to compact time, right?
Yep.
Interlace time
Different
in comics.
mediums. Yeah.
And we do that on purpose. I'll never forget Todd McFarlane talking about when he was younger, a page he did where a car was supposed to drive around a bend, hit um, the banister or what have you,
Barrier.
the
Yeah, yeah.
barrier, break the
Yep.
barrier, and then the figures leap out. He did one picture.
Yep.
He turned it into a splash page, an upshot, cars coming towards us, figures are leaping out, the barrier is broken, and you see the side of the road up behind them, very small.
Yep.
And he emphasized the characters because they were the most important. It was an immediate understanding of the scene, but he took all those different moments and compacted them into one big moment.
Yep.
Then Eisner. Eisner would take one moment and give you many panels and speed up the panels but slow down the moment. It's like drip, drip, drip,
Yeah.
drip. And he would use that as like when he did the spirit, and the spirit was, I think it was beat up and it was on the floor and he was trying to get up, and in the foreground was a faucet and it was dripping, and every movement that he would do, another drip would drop. So you were
Yep.
literally hearing it drip, 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 and he was literally breaking it into these segmented moments or
Yeah.
mini moments, you know?
Literally showing the passage of time.
Yeah, and then Jack would do something where he would stretch a he would take a panel and he would try to capture the most powerful moment of the scene. That's what keyframe animators do. Keyframe animators don't do this. They do this.
Yeah.
And they do that, like all the way, you know. They're not going to give you. Sorry, I'm hot. They're not going to give you. They're not going to give you all the different moments. That's for the in betweener to do.
Right.
They're the keyframe artists. They do the key moments. And Jack told me to think like a keyframe artist. He didn't say it exactly those words, so I'm paraphrasing, but
Yeah.
and I'm simplifying for the sake of this. But essentially, he said, think like a keyframe animator. And then that was reiterated to me in a very different way by when I was assisting Rags Morales. And Rags said to me, typically in comics, we go A to C, A to C. It's only on occasion that we go A, B, C.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, he was talking about those key moments of the scene. So you have to see the whole scene, and then you have to figure out what are the key moments within that scene that will most be the most appealing and the most clear.
Yeah.
That's when you start saying to yourself, oh, can I do that? Oh, that's hard. Wait, how do
Yeah.
I do that? Wait, I have to do that for every beat and every scene in every book on every page? Oh, that's tough. Where do I begin? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll let you know why, even if you can prompt your pages. If you don't know the things I'm saying, someone else is there right now going, oh, I can
Oh
prompt it
yeah.
now because Ian said it. No, you're
Yep.
still going to get it wrong because you won't know when it's right and you won't know when it's wrong. The thing is, I was told by a friend of mine, who's a director of What If animated series. He said, when I first started trying to get into animation, he said, Ian, at this point in animation, you don't know what you don't know. You
Yeah.
don't even know what you don't know. So it behooves you to just, like all of us, no matter how much we think we know about something, we only, it's like seeing a half of a scene and thinking you know what's going
This is true.
on, which brings us back to the original conversation with wagging the dog and propaganda.
Yep.
As long
Well,
as
I
you only
can't
get
think
this
of a
part,
yeah.
you think you know everything. Be careful.
Well, I can't think a better way to end on cautionary advice there, and so much good artistic advice. And when we close out, I always want to give the guest an opportunity to talk about any of their recent works that they can talk about, so people can be on the lookout for those. And of course, I put your website, your social media, all that will be in the show notes. So I want to give you a couple moments here to let everybody know about anything pertinent that's on the horizon. Of course, that you can share, because I know a lot of it's, secret and stuff that's in the works. But go ahead. The floor is yours, my friend.
Okay, so certainly please go see or buy. There's a lot of extra stuff in the DVDs, and it's really awesome to have the actual collections. And if you get the DVDs for the Watchmen Chapter One, I'm not sure if my work will be in Chapter Two, but you bring the discs to me if I'm at a show, and I'll sign them. Um,
Awesome.
um, uh, that being said, so I was a character designer on Watchmen animated chapter one. Um, I was a storyboard artist for the live action film King of Killers by Kevin Grievous with Frank Grillo. Um,
Awesome.
I got a nice kudos from Kevin because he said on the last day of filming, uh, they ended up having to really get that scene that I had drawn, and they were very limited for time. So he said that they actually shot that scene frame for frame of what I
Oh,
drew,
wow.
which was
Right from
real.
what you drew.
Yeah, yeah. So that's always nice to see that something you board it ends up like that. Um, so my boards were used for King of Killers. Um, uh, there were some other movies that I worked on that are not out yet. I'm sorry, but
No worries.
um, um, There was also, I worked for Samsung. I did some commercial stuff for them, boards, live action. Um, and then I'll be speaking on two panels at Lightbox in Los Angeles, in Pasadena, California, October, I think it's 25th, 26th, and 27th is the show.
Okay.
And I
So
think
coming
I'm
up towards the
speaking,
end of the month.
yeah, I think I'm speaking on the 25th and 26th. I'm on one panel with Cinzia Angelini and several other people. Cinzia is a animation director and storyboard artist. She's incredible talent, and she's very humble. So she'll probably blush if she sees this. But she invited me to be on the panel. We're talking about how to survive in a world where maybe there's not a lot of stability in any of the fields at the moment.
Right.
So where can people shift to? And knowing that I've been in multiple fields, I can talk about that. She even wanted me to talk about fields that I've been in that were unrelated and how I transitioned to fields that are related. So I'll be doing that, I think, on the 25th. And then the 26th, hopefully I didn't get it wrong. You can go to the website uh, um, for Lightbox and find out. Just search my name.
Cool.
And then we're doing a panel that I created called Maximum Impact, and it's all about how to maximize the a scene. How do you get maximum response? So it could. So John Lamb is on it. He's a board artist and incredible artist for video games and stuff with Blizzard, I believe, also. Um, um, Aaron Soud um, from live action storyboards, Black Panther, et cetera, et cetera. Myself, Cinzia Angelini, talking about how to maximize a moment, not a high impact moment, but an emotional moment. Um, there's several other people. Anthony Lee Wynn was a comic book artist at Top Cow and now one of the best, like incredible storyboard artists, along with Aaron Sout, on all the Marvel movies. And I believe lots of others too. He's just incredible. And several other people I know I must have missed, but I'm trying to get this out.
Hey,
But there are a
I
few other
mean,
people, and I really hope that you come to the panels and feel free to ask questions. We're all just, I'm going to take it from the standpoint of still images that are sequential, and then open the floor to the storyboard artists for the children's animation, storyboard artists for video games, storyboard artists for live action films. So everyone's going to get to see like the different fields and how they solve problems and maximize the moment.
awesome. Well, I'll make sure I put the any pertinent links you can email to me. I'll put all the common links in the show notes for
Mm-hmm.
everybody to check out. Your social media and all of that will be in there. So, with all that you've got coming up, I'm just so honored that you took the time to spend with me today. I always cherish our conversations, and I hope to have you on again here in the future.
Oh, well, first, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone. If you made it this far, congratulations. Kudos to you. I love you. Um, None of us do this alone. We're all in this together.
Absolutely.
We're like cogs in a watch. You take out even the smallest part, and it doesn't work. So we all matter, and you matter. And thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Listen, hang out with me here for a few moments while I do my spiel and I
Sure.
do our outro. I want to remind everybody this is a video heavy podcast, especially episodes like this where we are sharing images and going over people's artwork. I want to remind you, head over to youtube.com/@nerdy-musings. It's nerdy and then Mewzings. If you want to subscribe, that's awesome. If you want to like, that's awesome. If you want to do a review, that's awesome. It's very helpful in getting exposure for the podcast. You can listen to it on any audio podcast platform as well. I do this for fun, but it's always nice to see that people are enjoying it and appreciate it. So go ahead and hit a like, hit a subscribe, follow, all those great things. And in the meantime, just make sure you keep it nerdy. Take care, everybody.
Keep it nerdy.